Hello, hi, and welcome to another episode of The Emma Gunn Show. Thank you so much for joining me. And first of all, thank you so much to everybody who took the time to get in touch over the last week. In the last episode, I shared an email or a message that I received from somebody who had elected to unsubscribe from my Substack. And I made the point that she had completely valid points. I was really sorry to see her go, but how disappointing it was or frustrating it was from my side to have only heard from her as she was, well, not just walking out the door, as she had left the building, closed the door behind her and was probably already back home. And I had so many messages from people saying, actually, this is what I like about the show, or yeah, the new direction, it took me by surprise, but I'm staying tuned, but I would love it if you would still talk about what you're doing in your week or what you think about current news and things like that. So it's been so helpful for me because I actually have been sitting down this week in the last few days thinking, great, okay, so I can cover this weight loss effort, this weight loss challenge that I'm doing. I can talk about that. I do think there's value in talking about that in a way that is helpful and healthy, but I can also bring some other bits into it that hopefully will also be of interest, especially to those of you, and I know it was so many of you who got in touch have been here for ages. And by ages, I mean 9 years or more. So you have no idea how much love I have for you for being here. I really do. So when I see those messages and I get that kind of feedback, it really helps me sort of shape the show into something that you will keep enjoying on, or I want you to keep enjoying, but that will still welcome in new listeners or welcome back returning listeners. I hope that there's so much there. So that's what I wanted to say. I really did want to start off with a big thank you. So thank you to everybody who got in touch. I've loved reading your messages this week. Right, so let's get on to the weight loss effort / challenge. And actually, I sort of come to you feeling like a bit of a fraud because I have broken a plateau, but I'm not sure it's entirely, well, you're like, okay, let me just tell you what happened. Last week was the first week in these. I started on the 3rd of March and it is now, as of today, is the 19th of May. So it's been over 2 months, 2.5 months. And last week was the first week where I wasn't able to be as diligent about my food intake as I have been previously. I still showed up for my workouts despite the fact that I was so tired. To give you context, on Tuesday, I went on a press trip, an overnight stay. So obviously there was a brilliantly and a beautiful and delicious catered meal in the evening, which I wasn't going to turn my nose up at and say, excuse me, how many grams of protein are in this? And can you just share with me what the macros are? I mean, I ate it. I enjoyed every mouthful. It was divine. And the next day I came home, unpacked, did my full body workout, and it was so hot that day. And I never normally work out in the afternoon. And that day it was so bad. It was a high heart rate exercise routine on a really, really hot afternoon. So I sweated buckets and I just had to get in the shower, throw on some clothes and go back out because I was really lucky because I got to go and watch the recording of Later with Jules Holland up at Alexandra Palace. And I'm a South London woman. North London frightens me. The journey frightens me. Not really. It's East London that frightens me. No, but what I mean is that it can be a bit of a faff getting back. And so that ended up being a late night. Plus, by the time I got there, because I'd worked out, because I'd been quite frenetic, I hadn't eaten. So yes, I ate half a pizza with a friend and enjoyed every mouthful again. But I did think, okay, well, that's obviously not part of this plan. That's not part of this consistency. But at the same time, a girl's got to eat, and I'm not going to scavenge around for the right amount of macros when the food is there and I'm hungry and we've got 20 minutes before we have to go in and watch this incredible show. I've now discovered Wet Leg. Their performances were amazing. Also, never really had an appreciation of Sparks, who were also there. They were fantastic. And who else? Oh, just brilliant. Anyway, so I was fully expecting last week to be the week where I plateaued or even possibly gained, because I don't cook with a lot of salt. I don't use a lot of oil, which are all things that you would find in food that's catered or in food in a restaurant. So I was like, okay, well, I'll take this one on the chin. There's nothing I can do about it. I'm not going to go on this press trip, and I'm not going to not go to Later with Jules Holland. So suck it up. But I guess it's evidence of the consistency paying off, because my quantities were moderate, and I didn't overdo it. If you've ever followed, or in fact you should follow the EC method, they talk about this kind of, if you can't be perfect, you can go into the effort bucket, and I definitely didn't fall into that. I enjoyed what I wanted in a quantity that was appropriate. I was very close to getting another pizza to share, and then in the end didn't, and was really glad. But anyway, so all of those, what I'm saying is that even though they felt like bad days, like, oh, okay, that's not really ticking the boxes of consistency that I've been talking about. It's not ticking the macro boxes that I've been really focused on. In every day and meal around that, I was incredibly consistent, and I went back to what I knew was working. And I suppose that is why I have experienced this loss. So as of this morning, having plateaued for about 3 weeks at around the 7 pound mark, I hit 8 pounds this morning. Now, that is my first day of hitting that number. So what usually happens when I hit that number is then it goes up again for a couple of days. Then maybe it will go down again, then up. So there's a little bit of a dance. There's a little bit of a flirty dance that goes on with the scale weight. But what I'm really looking at, and I said this on my Instagram post last week, it's the non-scale weight victories that I'm really paying attention to. I feel so much better. I don't feel as bloated, and I think I might have said this to you last week, but in the pictures where I show what I look like on the 3rd of March, which by the way, I wasn't unhappy with, but I just felt physically, I felt like I just don't think I'm looking after myself in the best way. I think I'm doing something resembling maintenance, but I'm not feeling as good as I used to. And so the key here is the off-ramp, as one of my followers brilliantly put it. The off-ramp back into maintenance has to be a maintenance that makes me feel good, not a maintenance where I'm just getting away with not gaining weight, which I think is where I was kind of maybe in the neighborhood of before. So I do feel so much better. And I think I just can't talk about the intermittent fasting enough. Giving my body a break, giving my body the ability to digest the food that I've eaten seems to be one of the big things that just makes me feel absolutely fantastic. I've also stopped having really bad mid-afternoon slumps. I always used to, for example, if I was up in London and I would get the train home, I would often doze off. And I've always been very good at waking up just before my stop, but I would fall into quite a sort of deep sleep, and I'm not doing that at the moment, which is a shift, which is good. My sleep is, I would say, a little bit better, but again, it's still dramatically influenced by the luteal phase, so that will always be slightly disrupted. Last night, I woke up at 1:40 and I just thought, right, I'm too awake to try to go back to sleep. I'll start thinking things that I don't want to think, so I need to distract my thoughts. So I put on some reality TV, put on a sleep mask so I could hear it but not see it. And I just tried to pay close attention to that, and then within not that long I was able to kind of zone into that and then sort of zone into sleep again, which was quite handy. But that's what I'm really thinking about, the non-scale weight victories. Also, dare I say it, my clothes feel so much better for not being tight. That's the wrong way to describe it. I just feel like my clothes feel like my clothes. I feel like I'm wearing my clothes, not that my clothes are wearing me. And that's a really nice feeling. That is a really nice feeling. Speaking of which, because I think, should we draw a line under the weight loss effort? Unless there's anything else? Oh, I do want to say that. Let me just quickly make a note about the thing that I want to talk about so I don't get distracted. When I posted this morning with my progress photo, so every Monday on Instagram, I do my workout and then I post my March the 3rd picture and then my that day picture. And I thought, well, I'll try this thing that I see people doing. So I said, if you would like me to show you what I eat in a day, comment WIEIAD in the comments. And then afterwards I thought I should have made it easier than WIEIAD. But anyway, I have had so many, let's just have a quick look on the old Computertron. Yeah, I mean, I've had a lot of comments and the majority of them are just saying that, show me what you eat in a day. I will do that. I have previously been very reluctant to actually do something like what I eat in a day. And when I have done it in the past, I have had some negative feedback, and I think I told you about it at the time, so we shan't dwell on it. But I remember, I think it was Chloe Madeley from the EC method who said something like, you can't assume, or no, I don't know if she said this, but this is what I took from it. Something like, you can't assume that everybody who's watching your content is going to be damaged by it, because I had withheld that kind of content from my feed because I didn't want to put something on my feed that might trigger someone's eating disorder, or trigger someone's eating issues, or trigger someone's feelings of inadequacy, or any of those things. I didn't want to do that. But then I think it's a very good point that you can't create content for the person who's going to be hurt by it. What about the person who's going to find value in it? And that, to me, is evidence. Those hundreds of people who've said WIEIAD in the comments, that's just evidence that perhaps it would be helpful. And I don't feel bad about posting that content, simply because I believe that what I am doing with my macros and with the way that I'm composing my food, if you like, is healthy, is feeding me, is fueling me in a way that is making me feel really good. So why wouldn't I want to share that with people who perhaps are in the position I was in before, where maybe their food the way they eat isn't making them feel fantastic. So if that's something that you would like, again, comment underneath this video. You don't have to do the WIE blah, blah, blah. You can just say, yeah, I'd like to see that. What you eat in a day content, Emma. And if you're listening to this on the podcast, you can email me at office@emmaguns.com. You can DM me on Instagram, where I'm at @emmaguns. And you can also comment on my Substack. And I keep saying it, but I will get better at updating the Substack. The thing I'm finding is, truthfully, wasn't going to say this, but let's just say it. Producing a YouTube video, which is also a podcast, the Instagram content, plus the work that I do, and also trying to add Substack into that, it all seems on the surface like, yeah, that's really great. I'll be able to do an Instagram video on Monday, YouTube video on Monday. I'll probably bang out a piece on such and such. It's not as easy as that. And actually, somebody messaged me this morning on Instagram and said, I'm trying to read your Substack, but I have to pay. Can you copy and paste it and send it to me? And it just made me think, do people understand how writers and broadcasters make a living? Because it's not by copy and pasting everything. Although, obviously, this podcast is free to listen to. So, hey, leave a 5-star review, subscribe, tell your friends, all of that kind of caper. Anyway, let's go on to the other thing that I was about to tell you. Okay, so the other thing that happened in the last week is that I had my colours done. And by Jiminy, has that caught people's interest. Now, if you're watching this on YouTube, you will be able to see the taupe t-shirt that I demonstrated. So the way that I showed people that I'd had my colours done was that I said, look, I have a uniform. It's a black t-shirt and a white t-shirt. But according to my colour analysis, I shouldn't actually be wearing white and black. They are far too stark for my colouring. I should be wearing something a bit more brown, taupe, oatmeal, khaki, etc. Now, those are just my neutrals. I have not even dabbled in any of my sort of accent colours, which are quite bright and varied. But a lot of people got in touch and I was saying, can you guess my season? And then I had a really interesting conversation with Gemma from This Is Mothership. And because I was saying, I've put these t-shirts on, I've done this video, everyone has said how much better I look in my colours. So many people are commenting saying that they've had their colours done, it's been game changing. Why is it that no fashion brand allows you to search their website by your season? Because if it's that transformative, if it's that game changing, then surely fashion houses would like you to find the thing from their collection, from their range that suits you. And Gemma kind of made the point, because it's not really the greater system. It's a set of rules that it's quite excluding. So it was a colour analysis system that was essentially designed to cater to, it's essentially about like the contrast between your skin, your hair, your eyes, etc., your colouring, that was essentially formulated for white women. Therefore, it does not translate very well across the board into people of colour. Now, I might be a person of colour who is of fair colouring, but obviously if we're talking about black skin, if we're talking about darker skin than mine, they are not necessarily catered for. The rules are a little bit looser. There's still the contrast, but whatever. So my colour came up as warm spring. At first it was like, oh, you could be a soft autumn sort of vibe, but because of the fact I've got my hair dyed, it was like, at the moment you're more of a warm spring. So many people thought I was an autumn. But when I looked at warm spring online, it's people like Jessica Chastain. I happen to think Jessica Chastain is one of the most beautiful people I've ever seen in my entire life. So I will take that we have a similar colouring, anything to have something in common with Jessica Chastain. I just want to say that. But then it was Emma Stone, then it was Leslie Mann, then it was somebody else. And I thought, well, they're clearly redheads with fair skin, and I am not a redhead with fair skin. But then when I went into it, it's people like Tyra Banks is a warm spring. Beyonce is a warm spring because she has quite fair skin compared to the contrast with her hair, which is obviously lighter than its natural colour a lot of the time. And she has quite light eyes. So I was like, okay, I'll go with it. And by going with it, I mean, I went online and I bought a handful of neutral t-shirt colours. So I bought this taupe that I'm wearing. I got a really nice chocolatey one. I got an oatmeal one that divided people online. I also got a khaki one. The khaki one seemed to be the true winner. Like I said, these are just my neutrals, but I have found it to be quite helpful. And I think helpful because I instinctively, or in an effort to be cost efficient or financially efficient, if I go into a shop and I like something, I don't know about you, but I kind of think, right, if I'm going to spend my money on this, I want it to really last. I need it to go with everything. And that often means that I will get the white, the cream, or the black. Because I think, great, that's a great investment. That goes with everything. Don't get me wrong, I'm not going to stop wearing black, and I'm certainly not going to stop wearing white, but this has opened my eyes up to it because I was going to my wardrobe every morning and I would look at what I had to wear. And more it was either an entirely black outfit or jeans and a black or a white top. And I wouldn't wear my black trousers with a white top because I felt like it reminded me of the uniform I used to have to wear when I was a waitress, which was always like white shirt, button down shirt, or white t-shirt tucked into black trousers. And I thought, well, I don't want to dress like a waitress now, even though that's not how wait staff dress, but it's just in my head that's kind of embedded. And I just got to the point where I thought, I've actually got a wardrobe full of clothes and I'm not wearing anything. And I'm wearing the same thing over and over. And recently I bought a really lovely top, but I bought it in the black. And then I just kind of like, well, what do I wear that with? Anyway, this has just, especially these neutrals, because I'm not a flare colour kind of a person. I bought a brown dress and I'm probably going to get a similar dress in a sort of emerald green. But that sort of neutral palette feels quite safe. So I'm just really curious. I mean, am I going to tell you this? Yeah, I'm going to tell you this. I wasn't going to tell you this. I was going to say this on Substack, but I'll say it on Substack too. I didn't want to say where I got my colours done because I felt that I would be taking work away from people because I got ChatGPT to do it. Let me explain. The reason I asked ChatGPT to do it is because I had finally bitten the bullet. I got in touch with a couple of people. I'd heard back from somebody. They'd said they had some dates available. I said, right, I'll do this date. I can be with you mid-morning. And I never heard anything back. And I thought, I think my message has been missed, or I just thought this is a bit of a faff. And it wasn't an inexpensive consultation. And then I saw another friend on Instagram on his stories say, I've just had my colours done, and share his colour palette. And I messaged and say, oh, could you tell me who did it? Because I really want to get it done. And I'm finding it a bit of a struggle to actually find someone to do it. And he said, it's ChatGPT. And within 5 minutes, I had my colours. Now, I will just say, I feel bad saying that because, like I said, people make a living doing colour consultations. I think that there is still huge value in those colour consultations if you want more than just what your colours are. If you want guidance, if you want to know how to wear things, if you want to talk about necklines, if you want to talk about how to put various colours together, if you want to know how to add colours into a wardrobe that you already have, those are what the colour consultations will be really good for. And actually, when I spoke to Gemma, she said the best investment, honestly, would be to hire a stylist to tell you about shape, to tell you how to wear certain things, to really tell you how to put these pieces together. And she makes a really good point. The other point she made was that if you have a colour consultation and they say you can never wear red, that's a rule. What if you love wearing red? What if wearing red is the thing that makes you get up in the morning and you think, oh, I'm going to wear my red jumper. Lovely. Or you wear your red jumper when you've got to be in a power mood, or you wear your red jumper when you're going out, or whatever, red top, whatever it might be. And then somebody says, no, not for you. Doesn't suit you. that's actually not very helpful. So there was a whole other layer to it that I hadn't, or layers to it that I hadn't really thought about, because I had just seen lots of people getting their colours done online and looking sensational. Like Ruth Crilly had it done, Lily Pebbles had it done. Who else had it done? But a few people had it done, and I just thought, okay, I want a piece of that action. It looks really, really good. And so I did it. I do feel bad about the ChatGPT thing. It's not something that I like to use very much. But I have then since spoken to people who had their colours done in person with a consultation, who then also used ChatGPT, and the result did come out for those people the same. So I feel as though, for me, it has been really good guidance. And actually maybe where I'll put my investment is in spending a day with a stylist, coming to my home, going through my wardrobe, telling me what goes together, what shapes really work for me, what shapes actually aren't doing me much good at all, and what I should be bringing into my wardrobe in that sense, so that everything feels really wearable and like it suits me. Because if we've got the colours down, now actually the shapes are just as important. So for those of you who've been watching the colour theory, I hope that isn't too shocking. Like I said, I've been sitting on that information for a little while, and I thought, am I going to say? But I'm saying here because I won't put it on Instagram, because I feel like that will obviously upset people. And if it's taken out of context, or without this kind of level of information, I would completely understand why a colour consultant would come into my DMs and tear me a new one, which I don't really fancy today. So I'm not going to do it on Instagram. Okay, let's finish this episode by talking about something, again, another thing I feel quite nervous to talk about, but okay, let's just bite the bullet and do it. And that's Ozempic. Now, you might be thinking, but Emma, you spent quite a lot of time talking about that the other day. What gives? And I tell you what gives is I was out, as you know, as I told you earlier in this episode, I was out quite a lot last week. And the topic of Ozempic came up time and time again. It was a very, very hot conversation. And I was interested in the way that the tone of that conversation has changed. I think for a long time, people have been saying, and I agree, how good this is, how fantastic it is for people, the potential health benefits, the health implications. But there's also been something of I just sensed a sort of a change in the air, partly because quite a few people were saying it's an easy way out, which I don't know as if I necessarily subscribe to, but I do think it's a different mechanism. So I'm on this weight loss effort at the moment, and it's taken over 2 months to lose 8 pounds. I'm sure somebody on Mounjaro, semaglutide, Wegovy, Ozempic would have lost a lot more weight in that time. But I'm building muscle, I'm losing body fat, I'm eating protein. So even though the result might be similar, there's a completely different thing going on. But I was just really interested by this idea of, but it is because you haven't been able to make diet and exercise work. I heard that from a couple of people last week, and I thought, oh, that's really interesting. And I was trying to work out, is that because there are lots of people out there who make very conscious decisions to eat a certain way so that they don't gain weight or so that they lose weight, and they feel that that being a sort of factory setting or an update that people don't have to think about is perhaps something I don't know, just makes them feel uncomfortable. I don't know, but I definitely felt a shift in the air of this kind of a far less receptive sort of feeling towards Ozempic. And again, like I said, just this idea of, it's been talked about before, the idea that it's this easy way out. I don't think it's easy. I don't think taking any kind of drug is easy. But the one thing I will say about it that I heard subsequently that made me think, oh, okay, if I was on one of those drugs right now, if I was on a GLP-1, and I've said it before, but I'll say it again, if I hadn't come to terms with my eating issues and overcome or gone into recovery for binge eating disorder, as soon as those shots became available, I would have been the first person in the queue. Absolutely, I would have done anything to get my hands on them. I just want to make that very clear. I understand that. Please understand that's a position that I'm coming on. Just because my journey is slightly different does not mean I do not understand the mentality of what it is like to try and fail and try and fail and try and fail and just feel like you can't do it. And then there's a drug that comes on the market that, yes, it has some side effects, but once you get into your stride with it, it can make all of your weight issues go away. How fantastic. But I've gone off on another tangent. But I was having a conversation with somebody else who quite connected, knows a lot about this sort of thing. and said for everybody who is now comfortable on those drugs, eating a certain amount, no longer has that urge to eat in vast quantities or to eat a certain type of food, do not think that those drugs are going to have that same effect long term, because the food industry is already working on Ozempic resistant foods. And as soon as those words came out of my friend's mouth, I just thought, that is so obviously what's going to happen. Whatever mechanism it is in the GLP-1s that stops makes the body feel full, takes away that food noise, all of those things. Of course, the people who've made the food to have a certain type of mouthfeel, for us to never be able to stop. Once you open a packet, you've got to get to the bottom of it. Or if you go and have a certain type of fast food, you can't just have a meal, you've got to have a meal with 20 nuggets or 20, or not 20, but like a side of waffle fries or whatever. Like, it's never enough. Of course that is going to be on the agenda. I would imagine that there are labs somewhere that are working overtime in order to bypass the effects of the GLP-1 agonist drugs, so that people start to eat more even when they're on them. And as soon as I thought that, I actually felt like a real drop in my stomach for all of those people who will have thought, finally, I'm not governed by food. Finally, I'm not governed by not being able to stop, or not being able to stop thinking about food. And the idea that there are people working away, like the people who change the jack on Apple phones and things like that, and think, I know, we'll make it slightly different, so you have to buy new gear. All of it just made my heart drop for those people, because I'm sure it must feel like, finally, it must feel like a magic bullet or silver bullet. But to think that there are experts in a lab somewhere who are formulating foods so that you don't get those benefits anymore really frightens me. And that's not to say that there's more honour in what I'm doing. I'm not making a judgment call. I've said that before and I'll say it again. But it did make me think, thank goodness I've had the opportunity to figure out a way of eating that stopped me yo-yoing in weight from 200 pounds to where I am now. Thank goodness, because that was a lot. It's tiring and it doesn't feel good. And thank goodness I've also found a way of eating that makes me feel more energetic, that fuels my workouts. Like that, no one can take that away from me. No food company can take that away from me by putting something in my food that I'm probably not going to eat anyway. And I'm curious what you think about this Ozempic conversation, because especially as well, when I see on social media platforms, I see a lot of people sort of posting their journeys and saying how great they feel from the jabs, and that's fantastic. But I'm just curious, because I was hearing it last week. It does seem to be that there is a little bit of a, well, yeah, but, and I don't know whether that's because people have just got used to them being around and it's kind of, yeah, people lose weight now. It's that if you see anybody online who their body seems to change, the assumption is they're on Ozempic. Again, I've been out a lot recently, and it has been the talk of the conversation of who's doing it, who's thinking about doing it. And it's interesting to me. It's really, really interesting. But I do worry about these Ozempic resistant foods, because it's not like you're going to find out when they become Ozempic resistant. It is just going to happen. So anyway, it's all just really, really, really quite fascinating. And I think it's a topic, if you listen to my podcast with Johan Hari, in fact, I must email him and ask him if he's heard about these Ozempic resistant foods, you will know how complex the GLP-1 agonist drug space is, how brilliant, but how worrying, and all of those things. And actually, Johan, when he was on, I don't know if he still is, I think he is, but he has been taking the drugs for a long time. So we were having a conversation about binge eating and having issues with food, coming from a very similar place when it came to that, but also coming from sort of, we've both done something to get over that, but he's taken the GLP-1s, I've used diet and exercise. But again, only because I came to that realization before those drugs became available. If I hadn't come to terms that, I cannot stress this enough, I would have been knocking on every doctor's door that I know. I would have been whining to every single editor I know. How can I go on Ozempic? I'm telling you this now, I know that about myself. So I just want to be clear about that. There is no judgment here, but I think the conversation around it is just getting, It's just changing in tone. Have you felt that? Let me know. Anyway, I feel like I've wanged on for long enough this week, so I'm going to pop this up. You might also have noticed that the podcast is also published through Substack now. So as well as being able to watch on YouTube, you can also watch it on Substack. It's free. Why do I make everything free? I don't know, I'm an idiot. But it's free. It will obviously also be where the podcast usually is, so as audio only. But if you fancy watching along, then you can do on Substack and also on YouTube. And it'd be a delight to see you there. Like I said at the very beginning of this episode, your input over the last week has been so invaluable. I wouldn't have talked about my colours. I wouldn't have talked about that Ozempic conversation I was having last week if you hadn't let me know. Actually, we kind of do want to peek into all of that as well. So keep the feedback coming. Let me know underneath the videos. Let me know at office@emmaguns.com. Let me know on Substack, and let me know on Instagram where I'm at @emmaguns. And also, if you aren't following me on Instagram, that's where I'm posting my progress photos. It's also where I'm posting links that might be helpful for the tools that I'm using. I've also had a huge amount of requests to film more cooking videos and recipes. So I bought some equipment this week that I can use in the kitchen to film overhead. I've just actually this morning filmed the perfect soft boiled egg. So please do enjoy that coming to an Instagram feed near you. Anyway, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And again, I know I've said it a few times now, but thank you for your feedback. It means so much to me. It really does. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. Get in touch with me in all of the ways that I've mentioned, but I will see you on the next one.